You will never find a better card in college basketball than Walter Clayton right now. Let's ask our man, Mark Wise. Mondays in March with Mark. He knows the Gators as well as anybody, and he's been all over the basketball map calling games this year, and he's in the Atlanta airport right now. Mark, welcome in. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, but I got to ask you, Joe, your very first reference is a football reference on Championship Monday?
I'm just telling you, I heard
to be fair, it's a Timmy Tebow reference.
He channeled his inner Timmy Tebow. There was no getting away from that. You know I had to bring that up, Mark. But I said it earlier, and I think you can appreciate this because you do try and you try and drive the lane for us back to basketball smartly. And I enjoy this stretch in sports on my calendar as much as any other stretch. It's just crazy. Right. I can go from wild card weekend to the Super Bowl, of course, from the beginning of college football season, so on and so forth. But I loved the way the 16 teams made it, a lot of chalk, and then what we were treated to this weekend.
Well, Saturday was fabulous. Now, speaking of this time frame that you're talking about, I always wanted to be Jim Nantz because he did 3 weeks in the NCAA tournament and then went right to the Masters.
That is pretty good.
Does it get any better than that?
That is pretty good.
So, yeah, Saturday was, everybody talks about Cinderella. The drama, the theater that went on in the two games on Saturday was spectacular. The level of play was spectacular. I think what gets lost in the Duke-Houston game because the way Duke lost the game in the last 8 minutes is how well Duke played up to that point and how well Houston just was able to hang around. There were 2 times in the game where Duke was up 14 in the second half, and both times Houston answered with a 3. Now, down the stretch, everybody saw the same thing I saw. There were about 10 things that happened down the stretch of that game that if any one of them had gone Duke's favor, they probably win the game.
Now, Mark, there's styles in fights. You got Florida that wants to run up and down the court, and you got Houston that likes the half-court set. Whatever team dictates pace, do you think that'll be determining the outcome of the game?
Well, I don't know that you're going to dictate pace against Houston. That nobody else has done it all year, including Duke. They play a low possession game. I think there were 61 possessions in the Duke game the other day, and yet they were able to get 8 more shots. Why did they do that? Because they go to the offensive glass like none other. And 8 more shots doesn't seem like a whole lot, but when you throw that into a low possession equation, then those possessions get more magnified. I think they had 18 offensive rebounds, which surprised me that they were able to do that against Duke. I think if they get 18 rebounds against Florida, Florida's in real trouble tonight.
All right, so Mark, I was talking about this earlier, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Houston, I think everybody focuses on the fact that they're the best defensive team in the country. In the last 3 games against Purdue, Tennessee, and Duke, 3 heavyweight games, they've hit 29 threes. So they can shoot the ball, number one, and more important, and this I think is the most deadly thing of all, they turn you over, then get big shots off those turnovers. The momentum from that is brutal.
Yeah, they're what they are defensively is a mixture of Tennessee and Texas A&M, if SEC fans want to put it together, because they defend like Tennessee, hit the offensive glass like A&M. So throw those two together, and you kind of come up with a team that – and everybody has said this all season long, and I think I told you guys last week that the pathway to beating Duke was at the three-point line, that Houston had to make 10 or more in the game, and they did make 10 at the end. This is Kelvin Sampson's best offensive team. So you know how I feel about that. For coaches that say, we got to defend and rebound, no, you don't. No, you don't. You've got to make shots. Houston won that game in part because of Duke's failures down the stretch, but they also had to make shots, and they did that.
We're talking with Mark Wise, Mondays in March with Mark, as we get ready for this Natty tonight. To the point you guys are talking about, the 18 offensive rebounds that you mentioned, Mark, that Houston had over Duke, and they were able to turn it into 19 points. So their putbacks were effective. Even when you go to Emmanuel Sharp missing the 3 with the thunder dunk that followed. And those are the moments. And here's the other part, at least if I'm a Gator fan, I'm most concerned about, Mark, is the physical nature with which they play. They trucked a couple of big Duke post players down low and just knocked them to the ground. James should have. I don't know whether I'm sure he was evaluated for a concussion, but that was a nasty hit.
Yeah. Again, you know what the moniker it really is for teams that are physical. When we say they play really physical, that just means they foul a lot. And so from that perspective, they get away with a lot. And that's kind of the way it's always been. I thought the Florida-Auburn game was as poorly officiated a Final Four game as I've seen in a long time. I hate to say this, but one of the keys will be, do we have a tight whistle tonight or not?
Yeah.
Because if Houston, they're not quite as deep as Florida is, and if they get a couple of key guys in foul trouble, that will alter them. I'm looking at here. If you guys want an equation tonight, I'm going to give you one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the 3-point differential and the second chance points differential.
Yeah.
You put those two together, and whoever wins that, I think, will win the game. Florida averages 10 made threes a game. They need to make 10. Houston, who's a better percentage shooting team, they don't shoot as many because of the low possession games, but they make 8 a game.
Yeah.
Because they're top 5 in the country. And we've all talked about the offensive rebounding of Houston. Well, last time I checked, Florida's a pretty good offensive rebounding team, too. I just don't think you're going to throw it inside. And, Chinyulu's baskets, for the most part, come off when the offense is executed well and they kind of dump it down to him. You don't throw it to him 10 times a game and ask him to score block to block. I think they probably need to eliminate that part of the offense with Condon tonight. I just don't think he's going to be able to match up physicality-wise in terms of doing that little jump hook. I don't know the last time he scored in the NCAA tournament when they threw it to him down low. So I think Florida has to have a great three-point presence, not only in attempt, but makes as well.
Mark, speaking of Condon, we know he has the ankle. But like you said, he just hasn't looked like the same player that, frankly, in the last month of the regular season was crushing people. Like, he's not the same guy. Has he wilted a little bit, you think, in the moment?
I think he's probably wore down a little bit. I don't know how healthy the ankle is. We come to this every year talking about the ingredients to win it all, and one of them is you got to be healthy. I don't think Janai Broome was healthy the other day. Everybody talked about how he looked in the second half. In the first half, he saved all of his energy to play offense. Even if you go back and watch the game, look at the number of times he kind of walks up the floor or kind of soft jogs up the floor. And then in the second half, it became a complete walk-up. So you got to be healthy. And the good news for Florida is they can win games without Condon producing. It would be a lot easier if he had a 6-6 game tonight.
Yeah, one of our texters said Will Richards needs to come up big tonight. And he mentioned Condon as well, and I agree with that. He's a guy that he's not been mysteriously absent by any stretch, but there were a couple of big moments that he could have had the other night he just kind of missed out on.
Well, let me speak to the Will Richards thing. Mm-hmm. People are so focused on that sideline action that Florida runs with the bigs dribbling at you and coming around for a dribble handoff. Mm-hmm. If you are so focused on Will Richards, that means Walter Clayton has more room to operate. So I think that's one of those hidden things that, from an X and O perspective, Clayton's ability to get to the rim is in part because the defense is spread east to west.
All right, I want you to give me, if you do know anything about Carlin Hartman, associate head coach for Florida under Todd Golden. I know you've been close to the program for a long time, but this was his quote as they were trying to battle back against Auburn and talking about being in the huddle. They know I love them, but the bottom line, this was a win or go home scenario, and we were allowing them to dictate the terms. It went to the bigs. I cussed a lot and told each, they're challenging your manhood. It was unacceptable, and if we didn't turn it around, the game was going to get away. We had a choice to make.
Yeah, I think even the players gave him credit for the turnaround. Here's what I would say about that. You better not wait till the second half to find your physicality tonight.
You better
or else you'll be playing uphill in a low possession game. And, man, that is – if they get on top of you with the way that they play, it's just really difficult to come back. So, but I've been on several other programs who've asked me to pick a winner. And here's what my answer is. I fully expect this to be a 2-possession game with 5 minutes to go, one way or the other. Now, which team can play the best down the stretch?
Yeah, I like it. It's also the experience of an L.J. Cryer versus the experience of a Walt Clayton. Which one of those guys, right?
Yeah, I don't. It'll be really interesting if you want something to watch in the first segment. Watch what Houston does with Clayton, either coming off that Spain action that they run with the high pick and roll, or whether the help defenders are getting into gaps a little bit. Because I think one of the things that Clayton has weaved his way through this year is learning when to be the point guard and when to be the scoring guard. And if you do help out, then he's a willing passer. And that's when Richard I think gets his best three, when the ball comes from Clayton. So again, I come back to the same formula. I start with offense and the team that can win the 3-point differential, and then you mix in the second chance points. And I think that's where the two areas where I think the game will be won.
Gator fans are just texting left and right. They just want to know whether you feel good or you're worried. That's it. You don't need to name the winner.
There is no, first of all, there's no such thing as a bad outcome tonight for either team. Says you. I mean, I keep coming back to this. You've won 5 games in the NCAA tournament. The last time Florida went into the Final Four was 2014. Before that, they lost in 3 straight Elite Eight. You know what question I keep getting asked all the time? What does Florida got to do to get over the hump? What hump are we talking about? I mean, you've won 3 games in the NCAA tournament to get to the Elite Eight. So from that standpoint, from that kind of holistic standpoint, there's certainly I hate to say there's no loser tonight, and that sounds so trite. Yeah. Of course there will be, and for the winner, you go down in college basketball history. So that's how close you are. But I don't want fans to lose sight of how hard it is to win 2 or 3 games in the tournament, much less 6.
Right, but the former coach and you would give your left pinky for this game, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I was just making sure there. That's all, Mark.
I've told this story so many times. At the age of 24, I was on the staff at Purdue. Now I was another guy and myself. We were the 2 positions of what they have like 10 guys for now. The student assistant, the grad assistant, the player development, the video guy. I mean, you go down the list. We did it all. But at the age of 24, I had been in the NIT finals the year before. We went to the Final Four at Purdue. I thought I was going to do this for the rest of my life. And I never went back to the NCAA tournament. Wow. I think it was interesting to hear Kelvin Sampson and Bruce Pearl both talk about that this week, in the fact that they are returning to the Final Four, and you just don't know. You just don't know if you can get back there. So I think it's interesting. I think the matchups are interesting. I think the head coaching matchup is interesting. You kind of got a gritty, workman-like team versus a very analytically driven team. I think it'll be fascinating.
Hey, Mia here, and thanks so much for watching 1010XL. For even more great content like this, be sure to subscribe and like the 1010XL channel.